Commander Ali Martinez stood at the viewport of Jupiter Station, watching the approaching alien ship. Its smooth oval shape glowed with a soft blue light against the backdrop of Jupiter's swirling clouds. She took a deep breath to steady her nerves. Today would mark humanity's first official diplomatic meeting with an alien species. "They're requesting final docking clearance, Commander," said Rick Daniels from his communication station. Ali nodded. "Grant permission and alert the welcome committee. I want everyone in position in 15 minutes. As security chief of Jupiter Station, Ali had spent weeks preparing for this moment. The Zixthuri had made contact 3 months ago, sending signals from the edge of the solar system. After careful communication, both sides had agreed to this meeting. Ali straightened her dark blue uniform and checked her reflection in a nearby screen. Her black hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her brown eyes looked alert despite her lack of sleep. At 35, she was the youngest station security chief in Earth's defense fleet, and she felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. "Nervous?" asked a voice behind her. Ali turned to see Junior Lieutenant Danny Parker, a recent transfer to the station. He was tall with sandy brown hair and a friendly smile that put most people at ease. At 28, he was eager and talented, if somewhat informal at times. "Cautiously optimistic," Ali replied with a small smile. "This is your first alien contact, right?" Danny nodded. "Trained for it plenty of times in simulations, but the real thing? This is history happening right before our eyes." "Just remember your training," Ali said. "The Zixthuri have different customs. No direct eye contact for more than 3 seconds. No showing of teeth when smiling, and absolutely no touching unless they initiate it." "Got it, boss. I'll be on my best behavior." Ali hoped he meant it. Danny was a good officer, but sometimes acted on impulse. The station's speaker system came to life. "Alien vessel docking complete. Welcome party to Bay 12. Ali and Danny joined Admiral Joe Collins and Dr. Samantha Wright in the hallway. The Admiral was a tall man in his 60s with gray hair and the weathered face of someone who had spent decades in space. Dr. Wright, the station's chief medical officer, was a woman in her 40s with short blonde hair and intelligent green eyes. "Remember, people," Admiral Collins said as they walked, "this meeting sets the tone for humanity's relationship with the Zixthuri. Let's make a good impression." They arrived at Bay 12 just as the airlock cycle completed. The inner doors slid open with a soft hiss. 3 aliens stepped through the doorway. They were tall and slender, standing nearly 7 feet in height. Their blue skin shimmered like it contained tiny flecks of light. They had no hair, and their faces featured large almond-shaped eyes that were completely black. Their noses were flat, with 2 small slits for nostrils, and their mouths were thin lines. They wore flowing robes of a material that seemed to change color as they moved. The alien in the center stepped forward. "I am Nevtar, ambassador of the Zixthuri Collective. We greet the humans of Earth and thank you for your welcome." His voice had an odd musical quality, and his English, while perfect, had a rhythm that made it sound almost like singing. Admiral Collins bowed slightly. "Ambassador Nevtar, I am Admiral Joe Collins. On behalf of the United Earth Government, I welcome you to Jupiter Station. This is Commander Ali Martinez, our Chief of Security, Dr. Samantha Wright, our Chief Medical Officer, and Junior Lieutenant Danny Parker." The aliens made a gesture that looked like a wave that stopped halfway. Ali recognized it as their formal greeting and returned the gesture. "We have prepared a welcome ceremony in the main observation deck," Admiral Collins continued. "If you would follow us." The aliens followed silently as they made their way through the station's corridors. Ali noticed how gracefully they moved, almost gliding rather than walking. Behind Nevtar came 2 guards, their hands never far from devices at their waists that Ali assumed were weapons. The main observation deck was the largest room on the station. One entire wall was a massive window looking out at Jupiter. The room had been decorated with both Earth and Zixthuri symbols, based on images they had shared during their communications. Station staff lined the walls of the room, all in their best uniforms. Ali could feel the mix of excitement and tension in the air. Admiral Collins led the aliens to a table set up in the center of the room. "We have prepared a symbolic meal to share. Our scientists have confirmed that our foods are compatible." Nevtar made a gesture that their research had identified as agreement. We look forward to this sharing of sustenance. In our culture, eating together forms a bond of trust. The ceremony began well. The humans and aliens sat across from each other at the table. The food was simple, fruits and vegetables arranged in patterns suggested by the HFY. Admiral Collins made a short speech about friendship between species, which Nevtar followed with his own words about cosmic harmony. Then things went wrong. Danny had been assigned to stand near the table, next to one of the HFY guards. As servers brought in a new dish, Danny shifted position to make room. In doing so, he accidentally made direct eye contact with the guard for several seconds longer than the 3-second limit. The alien guard stiffened. He made a sharp sound, like a whistle, and took a step toward Danny. "Sorry," Danny said quickly, looking away. "My mistake." But the damage was done. The guard said something in the HFY language, his voice rising. Nevtar responded to the guard, his voice calm but firm. Allie moved closer to Danny, keeping her movements slow and non-threatening. "What happened?" she whispered. "I looked at him too long," Danny admitted. "Completely accidental." The guard was still agitated, his hand now resting on the device at his waist. Admiral Collins rose slowly from his seat. "Perhaps there has been a misunderstanding. Junior Lieutenant Parker meant no disrespect." "The guard believes his honor has been challenged," Nevtar explained. "In our culture, prolonged eye contact from a lower-ranked individual to a higher one is a serious insult." "It was an accident," Allie said firmly. "Lieutenant Parker is still learning your customs." The guard made another whistling sound and suddenly drew his weapon, a small device that fit in his palm. Before anyone could react, he pointed it at Danny and fired. A bright blue beam of energy, plasma, Allie realized, shot across the short distance and hit Danny directly in the chest. "No!" Allie shouted, reaching for her own weapon. The room erupted in chaos. The Earth delegation dove for cover or reached for weapons. The HFY guard stood frozen, weapons still extended. But Danny didn't fall. He looked down at his uniform, now featuring a smoking hole right over his heart. The skin visible through the hole was reddened but intact. Everyone froze, staring at Danny in disbelief. Then Danny did something completely unexpected. He laughed. It was a genuine laugh of surprise and relief. "That tickled," he said, looking up at the stunned alien guard. "Is that the best you got?" The silence in the room was absolute. The HFY guard's hand trembled and he lowered his weapon slowly, his black eyes wide with what could only be shock. Nevtar stood up, his slender body tense. "Impossible," he whispered, the musical quality gone from his voice. "Our weapons, no species has ever survived a direct hit." Allie moved to Danny's side, examining the hole in his uniform. The fabric was burned away in a perfect circle, but underneath Danny's skin showed only slight redness, as if from a mild sunburn. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. Danny nodded, still smiling. "Fine," felt warm, kind of tingly, like static electricity, but all over. Admiral Collins had recovered his composure. "Ambassador Nevtar, I demand an explanation for this attack on my officer." But Nevtar wasn't listening. He was staring at Danny with an expression Allie couldn't read. Fear, awe, disbelief, perhaps all three. "This changes everything," the alien ambassador said finally. "We must consult with our leadership immediately." He turned to his guards and spoke rapidly in their language. Without another word to the humans, the three aliens turned and headed for the exit. "Wait, Admiral," Collins called. "You can't just leave after attacking one of our people." But the HFY were already gone, moving with that eerie gliding speed back toward their ship. Allie looked at Danny, who was still examining the hole in his uniform with a bemused expression. "I think," she said slowly, "you should get to the medical bay and let Dr. Wright check you out." "Yeah," Danny agreed. "Probably a good idea." As medical staff surrounded Danny, Allie turned to Admiral Collins. "Sir, what just happened?" The Admiral shook his head, his expression grim. "I don't know, Commander, but I have a feeling our first contact situation just got a lot more complicated. Outside the viewport, the blue glow of the HFY ship was already moving away from the station, back into the depths of space. The medical bay of Jupiter Station hummed with activity. Danny Parker sat on an examination table while Dr. Samantha Wright moved a scanning device over his chest. The area where the plasma blast had hit was now just slightly pink, like a mild sunburn that was already fading. "This doesn't make any sense," Dr. Wright muttered, looking at the readings on her screen. She was a serious woman with short blonde hair and a perpetual wrinkle between her eyebrows that deepened when she was confused. Right now, that wrinkle was very deep. "Am I going to live, Doc?" Danny asked with a grin. Dr. Wright didn't smile back. "According to everything we know about Zix-Thury weapons, you should be dead. Their plasma technology is designed to burn through metal plating. Your uniform melted instantly, but your skin barely shows any damage." Commander Ali Martinez stood nearby, arms crossed as she watched the examination. Admiral Collins had ordered her to stay with Danny and report any findings immediately. "Could it be something about Danny's physiology?" Ali asked. "Something unique to him?" Dr. Wright shook her head. "I've checked his medical records. Nothing unusual there. Regular human male, no genetic modifications, no implants, no special treatments." She turned to Danny. "Have you ever noticed anything strange about yourself? Unusual healing abilities? Resistance to heat or electricity?" Danny shrugged. "I've always been pretty healthy, I guess. Never broke a bone. Got over colds faster than most people. Nothing that seemed weird enough to mention." The door to the medical bay slid open, and Admiral Collins walked in, his face grim. "The Zix-Thury ship has left the system," he announced. "But 5 more of their vessels just appeared at the edge of our solar system. They're headed this way, and they're not responding to our hails." "They're coming back with friends," Ali said, her hand instinctively moving to her weapon. Admiral Collins nodded. "Seems that way. And I don't think they're coming for a friendly chat this time." He turned to Dr. Wright. "What have you found?" "Not much yet," she admitted. "But I'd like to run a more detailed scan. I've never seen anything like this." "Do it quickly," the Admiral ordered. "We need answers before those ships arrive." While Dr. Wright prepared a more advanced scanner, Ali pulled up images of the approaching Zix-Thury vessels on a nearby screen. They were larger than the diplomatic ship, with visible weapon mounts along their hulls. "They look like warships," she said quietly. Danny hopped off the examination table and came to look. "What do they want with us? With me?" "I don't know," Ali replied. "But whatever happened in that meeting room scared them. You survived something that should have killed you, and instead of staying to figure out why, they ran. Now they're coming back with reinforcements." Admiral Collins joined them at the screen. "We've activated the station's defenses, but if these ships are as advanced as the first one, I'm not sure how much good it will do." Dr. Wright called them back. "The deep scan is ready. Danny, please lie down on the table." Danny did as he was told. A large device moved over him, bathing his body in a soft green light. The scan took several minutes, during which everyone remained silent, watching the screen as it filled with data. When it was complete, Dr. Wright studied the results with widening eyes. "This is remarkable." "What is it?" Ali and the Admiral asked at the same time. "His cellular structure is changing," Dr. Wright explained, pointing to the screen. "The cells in the area where he was hit have a different composition now. It's like they've absorbed some of the plasma energy and reconfigured themselves." "What does that mean?" Danny asked, sitting up. "I'm not entirely sure," Dr. Wright admitted. "But it seems like your body didn't just resist the plasma blast, it adapted to it. The cells have created some kind of energy-absorbing layer." She looked at Danny with new interest. "Have you been feeling strange since the incident? Any unusual sensations?" Danny thought for a moment. "Actually, yes, I feel energized, like I just had 5 cups of coffee but without the jitters, and there's a kind of warmth spreading from my chest to the rest of my body." The Admiral's communicator beeped. "Collins here," he answered. "Sir," came a voice. "The Zix-Thury ships have accelerated. They'll reach Jupiter Station in 4 hours. Understood. Keep me updated on any changes." The Admiral turned to the others. We need to evacuate non-essential personnel. I've already contacted Earth Command, but reinforcements won't arrive before the HFY do. Sir, Ali said. What? If Danny is what they're coming for, they saw him survive their weapon. Maybe they see him as a threat. The Admiral nodded slowly, or they want to figure out how he did it. He looked at Danny. Lieutenant, I think we should get you off this station before they arrive. Danny stood up straighter. With all due respect, sir, I'm not running. If I'm the reason they're coming back, then I should be here to face them. Before the Admiral could reply, the station's alarms began blaring. What now? Ali muttered, checking her communicator. Rick Daniels' voice came through, tight with tension. Commander, we're picking up a transmission from the HFY ships. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. You need to see this. The screen in the medical bay flickered and showed the face of Nev Tar, the HFY ambassador. His blue skin seemed darker now, the shimmering more pronounced. People of Earth, he began, his musical voice now carrying an edge of threat. You have deceived us. You presented yourselves as an ordinary species, but you harbor individuals with abilities that mark you as dangerous. The one called Danny. Parker is not human as you claimed. He is something else, something our people have encountered before. Ali, Danny, and the Admiral exchanged confused looks. We demand you surrender this individual to us for examination, Nev Tar continued. If you refuse, we will consider it an act of aggression, and we will take appropriate action. You have 3 of your Earth hours to comply. The transmission ended, leaving the room in silence. What did he mean? Something our people have encountered before, Danny asked, his voice quiet. Dr. Wright was still studying the scan results. These cellular changes, they're not random. It's almost like your body knew exactly how to adapt to the plasma energy. She looked up at Danny. It's as if it's happened before, somewhere in your genetic history. Admiral Collins's face was grave. I need to contact Earth Command again. This situation just got a lot more complicated. He turned to Ali. Commander, I want you to start looking into Lieutenant Parker's background. Family history, genetic, lineage, anything that might explain what's happening. Yes, sir, Ali replied. And Danny, the Admiral continued, you're not to leave this medical bay until we figure this out. That's an order. Danny nodded, looking down at his hands. Sir, what if they're right? What if I'm not normal? Admiral Collins put a hand on Danny's shoulder. Lieutenant, I don't care if you're human, alien, or something in between. You're a member of my crew, and I don't hand over my people to threats. We'll figure this out together. As the Admiral left to make his calls, Ali saw Danny flex his fingers, a faint blue glow barely visible beneath his skin. Danny, she said quietly, are you okay? He looked up at her, his eyes troubled. I don't know, Commander. I really don't know. Outside the viewports of Jupiter Station, the gas giant continued its eternal dance, oblivious to the approaching alien fleet and the mystery unfolding within the station's walls. 2 hours had passed since the HFY ultimatum. Jupiter Station buzzed with activity as non-essential personnel boarded evacuation shuttles. Security teams moved through the corridors, setting up defensive positions. The deadline was approaching, fast, and no one believed the aliens would simply go away. Ali Martinez sat at a computer terminal in the medical bay, scrolling through Danny Parker's family records. Dr. Wright continued to run tests, muttering to herself as she worked. Danny paced the room, rubbing his arms as if he were cold, though sweat beaded on his forehead. I found something, Ali said suddenly. Danny and Dr. Wright both turned to look at her. Your great-grandmother, Linda Parker, was part of the Callisto mining colony, right? Danny nodded. Yeah, she died before I was born, but my dad used to tell stories about her. She was one of the first human settlers on Callisto. Did your dad ever mention the radiation storm of 2175? Ali asked. Danny frowned, thinking. I think so. There was an accident at the colony, some kind of solar flare combined with a mining explosion. A lot of people died. But not your great-grandmother, Ali continued. She was one of 27 survivors who were directly exposed to the radiation. According to these medical Records, they all showed unusual recovery patterns, but the doctors at the time couldn't explain it. They were monitored for a few years, then cleared when no negative effects appeared. Dr. Wright rushed over to look at the screen. This radiation, it wasn't normal. The report says it had properties they'd never seen before. She turned to Danny. This could be it. The radiation might have altered your great-grandmother's DNA, and those changes were passed down to you. But why would it only show up now? Danny asked. The changes were probably dormant, Dr. Wright explained. They needed a trigger, like the plasma blast. Your cells recognized the energy signature and adapted to it. Allie's communicator beeped. Martinez here. Commander, Admiral Collins's voice came through. The HFY ships have taken up position around the station. They're scanning us with some kind of energy beam. I need you and Lieutenant Parker on the command deck immediately. What about the ultimatum? Allie asked. We still have nearly an hour. It seems they've decided not to wait, the Admiral replied grimly. Get up here now. Allie looked at Danny. Let's go. As they hurried through the corridors, Allie noticed the blue glow beneath Danny's skin had become more visible. It pulsed in time with his heartbeat, most noticeable on his hands and neck. You're glowing, she said quietly. Danny looked down at his hands. It's getting stronger. And I can feel something. Like there's electricity running through my veins. They reached the command deck to find it in controlled chaos. Officers moved between stations, voices tense as they reported status updates. The main view screen showed 5 HFY ships surrounding the station, their sleek blue hulls menacing against the backdrop of space. Admiral Collins stood in the center of the room, his gray hair disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. He turned as Allie and Danny entered. There you are, he said, then froze as he saw the blue glow emanating from Danny. What the hell is happening to you, Lieutenant? Before Danny could answer, the view screen changed to show Nevtar's face. The HFY ambassador looked different. His normally smooth blue skin now displayed intricate patterns of darker blue that shifted and moved. Your time is up, humans, Nevtar announced. We know the energy absorber is still on your station. Surrender him now or we will take action. Admiral Collins stepped forward. Ambassador Nevtar, we need time to understand what's happening. Lieutenant Parker is a human being who was born on Earth. If there's something unusual about him, we have a right to know what it is before we consider your demands. You play games with us, Nevtar hissed. Our scanners detect the energy signature. It grows stronger. Soon it will be too late. Too late for what? Admiral Collins demanded. Instead of answering, Nevtar made a sharp gesture. The transmission cut off. Alarms blared throughout the command deck. They're powering up weapons, Rick Daniels called from his station. Shields to maximum, Admiral Collins ordered. Prepare to return fire. The station shuddered as the first HFY blast hit the shields. Shields at 80%, someone shouted. Danny stepped forward, the blue glow now bright enough to cast shadows. This is because of me. I should go to them. That's not happening, Lieutenant, Admiral Collins said firmly. We don't surrender our people. Another blast rocked the station. Shields at 60%. Sir, Danny insisted. People are going to die. Admiral Collins turned to face him fully. And what do you think will happen if we hand you over? They'll study you, dissect you, and then come back for anyone else who might share your abilities. Station rocked again, harder this time. A console exploded in sparks, throwing an officer to the floor. Allie rushed to help him up. Shields at 40%. We can't take much more of this. Danny looked at his hands, now pulsing with bright blue energy. He closed his eyes for a moment, seeming to listen to something no one else could hear. I think I can help, he said quietly. Before anyone could stop him, Danny ran to the emergency airlock next to the command deck. Danny, no! Allie shouted, running after him. But Danny was already cycling the airlock. He looked back at her through the small window in the door, his face eerily lit by the blue glow that now covered his entire body. I'll be okay, he mouthed, though Allie couldn't hear him through the thick door. Override that airlock, Admiral Collins ordered. I can't, sir, Rick replied, fingers flying over his console. He's locked out the controls. Allie watched in horror as the outer door of the airlock opened, exposing Danny to the vacuum of space. But instead of dying instantly as he should, have Danny floated out surrounded by a bubble of blue energy. "Get him on screen," Admiral Collins ordered. The view screen changed to show Danny floating in space between Jupiter Station and the Zix-30 ships. The blue energy around him grew, brighter, expanding into a sphere that pulsed with power. "What is he doing?" Allie whispered. On the Zix-30 command ship, Nevtar watched in growing alarm as the human floated in space, surrounded by the same energy their weapons utilized. This was impossible. Humans were fragile creatures. They could not survive in space. They could not harness energy this way. Yet there he was, the human called Danny Parker, not only alive in the vacuum, but glowing with power. "Fire again," Nevtar ordered. "Destroy him before he fully transforms." All 5 Zix-30 ships fired simultaneously, their plasma weapons converging on Danny's floating form. The energy beams struck his glowing shield and were absorbed into it. The blue sphere around Danny grew larger, brighter. Back on the command deck, everyone watched in stunned silence. "He's absorbing their attacks," Dr. Wright said, having joined them just moments before. Just like his cells absorbed the energy in the meeting room, but on a much larger scale. The blue sphere suddenly pulsed, then contracted around Danny before expanding outward in a wave of energy that washed over the Zix-30 ships. Their weapons went dark. Their engines sputtered and died. They drifted, powerless. Danny turned and floated back toward Jupiter Station, the blue energy guiding him to the airlock. As the outer door closed behind him, Allie rushed to meet him. At the inner door, when it opened, Danny stumbled out, the blue glow fading from his skin. He looked exhausted but unhurt. "How did you do that?" Allie asked, helping him stand. Danny shook his head. "I don't know. It was like the energy told me what to do. I could feel their weapons, and I knew I could take that power and turn it back on them." Admiral Collins approached, his expression a mix of awe and concern. "Lieutenant, that was either the bravest or the most foolish thing I've ever seen." He paused. "But it worked. The Zix-30 ships are dead in space." "Not dead," Danny corrected, "just powerless. I didn't hurt them, I couldn't." The view screen activated again. Nevtar appeared, his ship now lit only by emergency lighting. "What have you done to us?" the alien demanded, his voice shaking with what might have been fear. Admiral Collins stepped forward. "We've defended ourselves, Ambassador. Now I think it's time we had an honest conversation about Lieutenant Parker and why you're so interested in him." Nevtar was silent for a long moment. Then, in a voice that had lost all its musical quality, he said, "The absorbers, they have returned." The conference room on Jupiter Station was quiet except for the soft hum of life support systems. Admiral Collins sat at the head of the table, with Allie and Dr. Wright on one side. Across from them sat Nevtar and 2 other Zix-30. Danny sat at the far end, keeping some distance from the aliens. The blue glow had faded from his skin, but occasional flickers of energy still danced across his fingers when he wasn't paying attention. "The absorbers," Admiral Collins said, breaking the silence. "You've mentioned this term twice now. I think it's time you explained exactly what you mean." Nevtar's dark eyes fixed on Danny. "They were a species we encountered thousands of years ago, when our people first ventured beyond our home system. They appeared peaceful at first, much like humans, but they possessed an ability that made them dangerous. They could absorb energy and redirect it." "Like what Danny did," Allie said. Nevtar nodded, the motion stiff and formal. "Yes. Our ancestors believed them to be gods at first, beings who could not be harmed by weapons, who could walk through fire and survive the void of space." "What happened to them?" Dr. Wright asked. "War," Nevtar said simply. "A terrible war that lasted generations. The absorbers grew stronger with each attack against them. Our ancestors had to develop weapons that did not use energy. Primitive projectiles, poisons, even hand-to-hand combat." "You killed them," Danny said quietly. Nevtar's skin darkened. "We defended ourselves. The absorbers sought to conquer all they encountered." They believed their ability made them superior to all other life. He paused. At least, that is what our historical records tell us. The war ended 5,000 years ago. The few absorbers who survived fled to unknown regions of space. And you think Danny is one of these absorbers? Admiral Collins asked. I did at first, Nevtar admitted. But now I am not certain. He does not look like the absorbers in our historical images. And his ability seems different, less controlled, more instinctive. Dr. Wright leaned forward. We believe Lieutenant Parker's ability comes from genetic changes caused by unusual radiation. His great-grandmother was exposed to it during an accident at the Callisto mining colony nearly a century ago. Radiation? One of the other Zixthuri asked, speaking for the first time. This one was shorter than Nevtar with lighter blue skin. What kind of radiation? Dr. Wright pulled up a file on her tablet. The records describe it as non-standard. It appeared after a mining explosion combined with a solar flare. The scientists at the time couldn't classify it. The Zixthuri exchanged glances. Nevtar spoke a few words in their language, then turned back to the humans. This is most concerning, he said. There is a substance known to our people called Verak. It is extremely rare and highly dangerous. When exposed to certain energy conditions, it emits a radiation that can alter living tissue at the genetic level. And you think this Verak was on Callisto? Ali asked. It is possible. Verak forms only in the cores of gas giants under specific conditions. Your mining operation may have discovered a fragment that had been ejected during Jupiter's formation. Danny, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. So, I'm not an absorber. I'm just a human who got lucky, or unlucky, with some alien radiation. Nevtar studied him. Yes and no. You are not an absorber by species, but you have developed abilities similar to theirs. This has never happened before to our knowledge. It raises many questions. Like what? Danny asked. Like whether others with the same genetic background could develop similar abilities, Nevtar replied, and whether those abilities will continue to grow stronger as they did with the absorbers. A tense silence fell over the room. Finally, Admiral Collins spoke. Whatever the case, Lieutenant Parker is a member of Earth's defense fleet. He is under our protection and jurisdiction. We understand, Nevtar said. We no longer seek to take him from you, but we must insist on monitoring his development. If he begins to show signs of instability or aggression, it could pose a threat to both our peoples. Danny stood up suddenly, blue energy flickering across his arms. I'm right here. Stop talking about me like I'm some kind of experiment or weapon. All eyes turned to him. The Zixthuri tensed visibly. Danny, Ali said softly, calm down. Danny looked at his arms, seeing the blue energy growing brighter. He took a deep breath and slowly the glow faded. Sorry, he said. It's just, this is a lot to take in. Yesterday I was a normal human. Today I'm apparently some kind of energy-absorbing mutant that reminds these aliens of an ancient enemy. Not enemy, Nevtar corrected. Not yet, at least. What you become is up to you, Danny Parker. Admiral Collins stood up. I think that's enough for now. Ambassador, your ships are still disabled. We'll provide assistance in repairs, but I want your word that there will be no more aggression toward this station, or Lieutenant Parker. You have my word, Nevtar replied. But I must also communicate with my government. They will want to send scientists to study this phenomenon more closely. That will be up to Earth Command, Admiral Collins said, and Lieutenant Parker himself. As the meeting ended, Ali noticed Danny slip out of the room. She followed him into the corridor. Hey, she called. Are you okay? Danny stopped but didn't. Turned to face her right away. When he did, his expression was troubled. How can I be okay, Commander? Everything's changed. I'm not who I thought I was. You're still Danny Parker, Ali said firmly. Still the same person. Danny held up his hand, letting a small flicker of blue energy dance across his palm. Am I? What if this changes me? What if Nevtar is right to be worried? Then we'll deal with it, Ali said. But for what it's worth, I don't think you have it in you to become some kind of galactic conqueror." A small smile tugged at Danny's lips. "Thanks for the vote of confidence." They walked in silence for a moment, heading toward the observation deck. "What did it feel like?" Allie asked finally. "When you were out there? In space?" Danny's eyes took on a distant look. "It was incredible. I could feel everything. The radiation from Jupiter, the energy from the station, the stars. It was like being connected to the universe itself." He paused, but the strangest part was that it felt familiar somehow, like my body had been waiting my whole life to do that. They reached the observation deck. Through the massive viewport, they could see the disabled HFY ships, their sleek forms dark against the swirling clouds of Jupiter. Earth repair shuttles moved between them, helping restore their systems. "What happens now?" Danny asked quietly. "Now we learn," Dr. Wright said, joining them at the viewport. "About you, about this ability, about the radiation from Callisto." "And if there are others like me?" Danny asked. "The other survivors from the Callisto incident had children and grandchildren too." "Then we find them," Allie said, "before someone else does." Danny nodded, his gaze fixed on the alien ships. "The HFY are scared of what I might become. Maybe they should be. Maybe I should be too." As if in response to his words, blue energy flickered across his reflection in the viewport, giving his eyes an otherworldly glow. 3 weeks had passed since the confrontation with the HFY. Jupiter Station had returned to normal operations, though with increased security and several new guests. A team of Earth scientists had arrived to study Danny's abilities, and 2 HFY observers had been permitted to stay and share information about the absorbers and Varrock radiation. Danny stood in the center of a large, empty room that had been converted into a testing chamber. The walls were reinforced with energy-absorbing materials, and observation windows lined one side. Behind those windows stood Allie, Dr. Wright, Admiral Collins, and the research team. "Ready when you are, Lieutenant," Dr. Wright's voice came. Through the speaker system, Danny nodded and closed his eyes. Over the past weeks, he had learned to control his abilities to some extent. He could summon the blue energy at will now, though using it still tired him quickly. He took a deep breath and focused. Blue light began to glow beneath his skin, spreading from his chest outward until his entire body was suffused with the pulsing energy. He opened his eyes, which now shone with the same blue light. "Power levels rising steadily," one of the scientists reported. "Heart rate and brain activity normal." A panel in the wall opened, and a small drone floated out. It was programmed to fire low-level energy pulses, nothing that would harm a normal human but enough to test Danny's abilities. The drone fired. A beam of white energy shot toward Danny. He raised his hand instinctively, and the energy stopped before it reached him, absorbed into the blue field around his body. The glow brightened slightly. "Perfect," Dr. Wright said. "Now try redirecting it like we practiced." Danny extended his hand toward a target on the far wall. He concentrated, focusing on pushing the energy he had absorbed outward. A beam of blue light shot from his palm, hitting the target dead center. The target registered the impact, lighting up with a satisfying ding. "Excellent," Dr. Wright said. "Your control is improving." Behind the glass, Allie watched with mixed emotions. Pride in Danny's progress, worry about what it might mean for his future, and unease about the attention he was receiving from both Earth and HFY authorities. "He's advancing quickly," Nevtar commented. The HFY ambassador had returned to Jupiter Station to observe the tests personally. "Faster than we anticipated." "Is that a problem?" Allie asked. Nevtar's skin rippled with shifting patterns. "It is concerning. The absorbers took generations to develop the level of control he is showing after mere weeks." "Maybe humans are just good at adapting," Allie suggested. "Perhaps," Nevtar conceded, though he didn't sound convinced. In the IKB testing chamber, Danny was now facing 3 drones. They circled him, firing in sequence. Danny absorbed each blast, his blue aura growing brighter with each one. Then, with a sweeping gesture, He released the energy in a wave that disabled all three drones at once. He stumbled slightly, the glow fading from his skin. Using his abilities still drained him, though his endurance was improving daily. "I think that's enough for today," Dr. Wright said, noting his fatigue. "One more test," said a voice from the back of the observation room. Everyone turned to see a man in a dark suit that marked him as a government official. He had arrived the day before, from Earth, introducing himself only as Agent Clark from the Defense Ministry. "Lieutenant Parker needs rest," Dr. Wright protested. "This won't take long," Agent Clark insisted. He pressed a button on a control panel. Another panel in the testing chamber opened, revealing a much larger drone. This one was clearly military grade, its surface gleaming with advanced technology. "What is this?" Admiral Collins demanded. "A more realistic test," Agent Clark replied coolly. "We need to know if Lieutenant Parker's abilities can have practical military applications." Before anyone could object further, the drone activated. It rose into the air, weapon systems humming to life. "Danny, get out of there," Allie called, through the intercom. But the door to the testing chamber had locked automatically. Danny looked at the observation window, his expression shifting from confusion to determination as he realized what was happening. The drone fired. Not a low-level pulse this time, but a concentrated energy beam that could cut through metal. Danny barely had time to raise his hands before the beam struck him. The impact knocked him back several steps, but his blue shield flared to life, absorbing the energy. He gritted his teeth with the effort of containing it. The drone fired again, and again. Each blast was stronger than the last. Danny absorbed them all, but it was clearly becoming difficult. His shield flickered and sweat poured down his face. "Stop this!" Dr. Wright shouted at Agent Clark. "You're going to kill him." "If he can't handle this, then he's not as valuable as we hoped," Clark replied coldly. Allie drew her weapon and pointed it at Clark. "Shut it down, now." In the testing chamber, Danny had fallen to one knee. His shield was failing, the blue light dimming. The drone prepared for another blast, its strongest yet. "Danny," Allie shouted. Something changed in Danny's expression. His eyes widened, then narrowed with a new intensity. He stood up straight, facing the drone. "Enough," he said quietly. As the drone fired, Danny didn't just absorb the energy. He seemed to pull it in, drawing the beam into himself faster than it could be generated. The drone's weapons sputtered and died as Danny drained them completely. The blue light around Danny grew blindingly bright. With a gesture that seemed almost casual, he sent a focused beam of energy back at the drone. It didn't just disable the machine, it cut it in half. The pieces fell to the floor with a crash. Everyone in the observation room stared in shock. Danny turned to the window, his eyes still glowing blue. With deliberate steps, he walked to the locked door. He placed his hand on it, and the locking mechanism melted under his touch. The door slid open. Danny walked into the observation room, the blue energy still swirling around him. He stopped in front of Agent Clark. "I am not a weapon," he said, his voice eerily calm. "I won't be used as one." Clark took a step back, his confident demeanor cracking. "The Defense Ministry will want a full report on—" "No," Danny interrupted. "What you'll report is this. I won't be tested again without my consent. I won't be pushed beyond my limits to satisfy your curiosity. And I certainly won't be turning my abilities into weapons for you or anyone else." The room was silent. Even Nevtar seemed taken aback by the authority in Danny's voice. Slowly, the blue glow faded from Danny's skin. He looked suddenly tired, but his eyes remained clear and determined. Admiral Collins stepped forward. "I think we're done here for today. Agent Clark, I'll be filing a formal complaint about your unauthorized test." Clark said nothing, but his expression suggested this wasn't over. As people began to file out of the room, Allie approached Danny. "Are you okay?" Danny nodded. "I am now. For the first time since all this started, I think I actually am." "What changed in there?" she asked. "One minute you were struggling, the next—" "I stopped being afraid," Danny said simply. I stopped fighting against what I'm becoming and just accepted it. And suddenly everything became clear. Nevtar had lingered listening to their conversation. The absorbers had a saying, he offered unexpectedly. The energy flows through all things. To master it, one must become part of the flow, not separate from it. Danny looked at the alien with new interest. That's exactly what it felt like. Nevtar's skin patterns shifted in what might have been the Zix-Thuri equivalent of a thoughtful expression. Perhaps you are not as much like the absorbers of our history as we feared. What do you mean? Ali asked. They sought to control energy to control others, Nevtar explained. Lieutenant Parker seeks to control energy to avoid being controlled himself. It is an important distinction. As they left the testing chamber, Danny looked out a viewport at Jupiter's swirling clouds. Somewhere in that giant world was the substance that had changed his life forever, and somewhere out among the stars were the descendants of the absorbers, if any had survived. What now? Ali asked, joining him at the viewport. Danny smiled slightly. Now we find out if there are others like me, and we make sure they have a choice about what they become. He turned to her. And maybe, just maybe, we discover what else is out there waiting for us. Blue energy flickered briefly across his fingers, but this time it didn't worry him. It felt right. A part of him that had always been there, just waiting to be awakened by a plasma blast and an alien's surprise.